Welcome to Sectors Up Close. I'm Elena Casas. Today we're talking Israeli tech stocks, and my guest is Stephen Schoenfeld, CEO of MarketVector Indexes. Israel has long been known as the startup nation, but the last 2 quarters have seen its tech sector judder to a stop. Israeli firms are being buffeted by multiple headwinds. The higher interest rates have affected growth companies around the world, but also rising geopolitical risk and investor concern about a judicial overhaul that has brought tens of thousands of demonstrators onto the streets in recent weeks. The first part of that legislation was passed on the 24th of July, removing some of the Supreme Court's ability to check government power, although that hasn't stopped angry crowds from marching against it. This is the iShares MSCI Israel ETF. It's flat on the year amid a sharp rally in global stocks, with Israeli tech underperforming its international peers by more than 15% as international investors turn away and the shekel weakens. For more, I'm joined now by Stephen Schoenfeld of MarketVector Indexes. Stephen, hi, thanks for joining us. Now, we did talk about this back in March, I think, when the judicial overhaul was at an earlier stage. And at the time you said you didn't think investors in Israeli tech should be too worried in the longer term. Do you still think that?
Well, I certainly think that I was over-optimistic. The government coalition pressed much harder than expected. And even though the president of the country brought the coalition and the opposition together for compromise talks, they were not successful. And the government went ahead, in many ways, going against some of their commitments to global investors and global rating agencies, and passed this first stage of the reform, as you said, in late July. The big question now is, are they going to keep pressing forward, or are they going to take another pause? But certainly Israeli tech stocks and Israeli equities as a whole were hurt by this.
What else has played into this underperformance, Stephen, apart from the political environment?
So some Israeli local investors are pulling back from their own tech stocks. So you've seen less flow there. And as we've discussed before, Israeli tech is generally not well represented in the broader developed market indexes. And so if foreign investors aren't making a dedicated allocation to Israeli tech, there is a chance that it would underperform. There's also concerns about labor costs and instability in the local market. I would say it's about a 50-50 chance whether we've seen the worst of it, or if the government presses ahead with further reforms, we could see protests accelerate and we can see some further underperformance of Israeli tech.
What needs to happen, in your view, for these stocks to stage a recovery?
So two things, in my opinion, need to happen. One, the government, either by voluntarily agreeing to compromise talks, or because of exogenous events. It could be geopolitical, or it could be loss of some coalition members that force an election. They actually do not have the majority popular support now, and they would lose an election if it was held today. So if that happens and there's a step back from this reform, I think there'd be a major relief rally. The other factor is just economics in the tech sector. There's only so far that Israeli tech companies, which are still world-class companies doing business in some of the most interesting sectors and interesting places in the world, can that rubber band of undervaluation stay stretched? Just as one example, SolarEdge, which is one of the world's leaders in solar technology, just openly signed a joint venture with Saudi Arabia, a country Israel doesn't even have diplomatic relations with. So some of these fundamental factors will come into play. All we need is a sense that the domestic political turmoil will attenuate.
Finally then, Stephen, 6 months ago you were quite bullish on Israeli tech. Do you still think foreign investors should buy the dip now?
So my bullishness was premature, as I said at the start of this segment. I think long-term investors who believe in the same sectors that Israel is a leader in, whether it's cybersecurity, defense tech, agri-tech, biotech, should still have exposure to Israel. If one felt that it was good value 6 months ago, it's even more of a value now. Israel hasn't really dropped dramatically. It just hasn't participated in the upward movement of developed market tech and American tech. So I would see it as a potential medium to long-term catch-up play. And for those with strong stomachs, it's still a good opportunity to make an allocation.
Stephen Schoenfeld, CEO of MarketVector Indexes, thanks so much for joining us. Well, that was your roundup of Israeli tech stocks. I'm Elena Casas, and this is Reuters.